One of the greatest successes of Disney's new DuckTales series has been its ability to recast beloved characters in a modern light while still retaining the essence of what made them iconic characters in the first place. It's an inherently difficult trick to pull off, a feat of writing that has to both defy and satisfy what fans think they love most about their favorite characters.
Ah, cool! A big-budget reboot of a thing I loved as a kid! Those are always great!
DuckTales has successfully given us new versions of Donald Duck, Huey, Dewey, Louie, Webby, Gizmo Duck, Mrs. Beakley, Launchpad, and even Scrooge McDuck himself. But along the way, it's been teasing fans with another modern adaptation, one that might be even harder to get right than everything that came before it. Let's talk about The Duck Knight Returns. This is Rebooting Darkwing Duck. Of all the shows that aired alongside the original DuckTales in the 1990s Disney Afternoon after-school cartoon programming block, you might think that Darkwing Duck would be the easiest to integrate into the canon of the new, rebooted DuckTales series. After all, they're both shows starring anthropomorphic ducks with a mixture of adventure, comedy, and family, and they even share a co-star in Launchpad McQuack. But believe it or not, this actually makes rebooting Darkwing Duck into Disney's new DuckTales series harder, not easier. Seeing Launchpad in both shows growing up almost felt like a continuity error. Fans who thought about it too hard were left wondering how Launchpad could live in St. Canard as Darkwing's sidekick while still working as a pilot for Scrooge McDuck. The only possible answer was that Launchpad left Duckburg and his DuckTales family at some point, and that was a story beat that never quite felt right. In 2016, we found out why. Darkwing Duck creator Tad Stones revealed that, despite borrowing a character and universe from DuckTales, the two shows narratively took place in different realities. At the time, a lot of fans were kind of taken aback by this revelation, but it's an explanation that actually makes a lot of sense. After all, in DuckTales, Launchpad is a notoriously bad pilot, someone who's proud of constantly crashing airplanes. But in Darkwing Duck, he's actually pretty competent. It could even be argued that Launchpad was a different character in Darkwing Duck than he was in DuckTales. For better or worse, Darkwing Duck was a show that didn't care about continuity if it got in the way of a good story idea, not unlike the Silver Age comics that Tad Stone says helped inspire the series. Disney's new DuckTales series, on the other hand, is a show that very much cares about continuity, which means it faces a unique challenge. How do you comfortably fit the world of DuckTales and Darkwing Duck into the same universe? The answer turned out to be more clever than any fan could have possibly imagined. When we first saw Darkwing Duck appear in the new DuckTales, he was exactly as fans of the original might remember him. As a television show. Specifically, a TV show that Launchpad grew up watching and is an ardent adult fan of. Throughout that episode, we see how Launchpad's fandom of the show and admiration for Darkwing as a character help define who he is as an adult. On top of being a great tool for helping us see Launchpad grow as a character, the clips we see in that in-universe TV show are a great tribute to the original Darkwing Duck cartoon. Not only featuring that show's original character design and a hearty helping of action and slapstick, but also the talents of Darkwing's original voice actor, Jim Cummings himself.
So you've heard of me?
On its own, this tribute was a completely satisfying way to pay respect to a classic Disney afternoon cartoon. And if DuckTales left it at just that, it would have been enough. But that stellar sequence was only a setup for something even better. A story that finds a way to take the separate worlds of DuckTales and Darkwing Duck and bring them together in a single, unified continuity of story. A feat it pulls off by doubling down on Tad Stone's controversial reveal that they take place in separate narratives, and then symbolically reconciling them together in a satisfying, exciting way. But first, the show needs to expand on what it's already set up. Darkwing Duck is a TV show in the DuckTales universe, and that means the actor that played him, Jim Starlin, is probably still around. And that's where The Duck Knight Returns open, showing us what that actor has been up to for all these years. Bit appearances and signing at the grand opening of furniture stores.
Look, I'm the one and only Darkwing Duck. I I need a real gig. I'm bigger than sofa store openings.
This is a great start to the introduction of Jim Starlin as a character. Not only does it establish him as the character archetype of the washed-up actor surviving off of his old fame, but it hones in on something that trope shares with the original character of Darkwing himself. A huge ego. An ego so big that when it hears there's a Darkwing Duck movie in production, it can't help but hear that as an entitlement to get itself back in the spotlight.
Darkwing Duck is back, baby!
He is?
This brings Dewey, Launchpad, and Jim Starlin to McDuck Studios, a film company Scrooge founded to make cheap office safety videos. This film studio is actually one of my favorite subtle jokes of the entire episode. Not only is it a silly and fun excuse for Scrooge to own a film studio for the plot to take place in, but it also hints that Donald Duck has a bit of a history as a film star. Each poster of the films that McDuck Studios has made features a Donald-like figure being the victim of several workplace safety mishaps in films like Don't Eat the Toner and Emergency Evacuations, Save the Money First. Those are all hilarious, but safety videos isn't what McDuck Studios is making this time.
You convinced me a fun little action movie would double my profits, but you're already over budget.
That's right, McDuck Studios is making the Darkwing Duck film. Unfortunately, the movie is running behind schedule and over budget. Scrooge isn't happy with the results. And to make matters worse, Launchpad and Jim burst into the studio to grill the director on how the film is shaping up.
Is Darkwing's motorcycle in it? Is he still a noble hero who gets back up and fights for right no matter what evil throws at him? You're keeping the theme song, right?
What the director shows them is the perfect parody of a high-budget superhero reboot film. From the gritty attitude and the subversive tones, to the cute wordplay that hints at what fans want out of a movie, but still somehow misses the point of what made the character beloved in the first place. It kind of looks like Darkwing, but something isn't right, and Launchpad catches on right away.
That is not Darkwing Duck. DW never hurt innocent people or set the city on fire. Not on purpose.
Pretty much nobody in the room is happy with where the film is going. Dewey doesn't understand what the trailer is going for, and he's bored, which bothers Scrooge because kids like Dewey are who the film is supposed to be made for. Launchpad, the old fan, is sad that it isn't the Darkwing he knows, and Jim Starlin himself is furious to learn that he isn't Darkwing.
That is not the Darkwing Duck I know and love.
Yeah, it's not me!
This kicks off Jim Starlin, dressed as Darkwing, teaming up with Launchpad so they can sneak into the studio and fix the film. It's really fun to see them scheming behind a bush, and it absolutely evokes a lot of the vibes of the characters' friendship from the original Darkwing Duck TV series. But like the movie trailer that inspired these hijinks, something seems off.
Any questions?
7.
Pick the most important one.
Breaking in, locking up. Doesn't that sound not heroic?
This line helps set the stage for how this episode helps transform Darkwing from a mere TV character to a proper part of the DuckTales universe. But before it can get to that, Launchpad needs to push his concerns about this situation aside and follow Jim Starlin's plan. A plan that involves distracting the security guard, fittingly voiced by the real Darkwing Duck creator himself, Tad Stones.
What production you delivering to?
Darkwing Duck!
Huh? Never heard of it.
Good job, Tad. You're a rising star in voice acting. As we enjoy that cameo, Launchpad finds himself in the trailer of the actor set to play Darkwing Duck in the new movie, and is all set to lock him inside so Jim can take over the role. But Launchpad's heart just isn't in it.
Help! I'm trapped in a prison of guilt!
Fear not, helpless. Oh, hey, it's you.
Even though Launchpad doesn't seem very confident in this plan, he really wants this new Darkwing Duck movie to go right. And so when the actor shows up, against his better instincts, he does try and stop him and keep him locked in the trailer. But as Launchpad starts to fight the actor, he starts to realize that he has a lot in common with this perceived enemy. There's evidence that the actor is just as much of a superfan as the show as Launchpad is, littered all around the trailer. In fact, this whole scene is a delight for fans of the original show. The actor's trailer is littered not just with references to the original Darkwing Duck cartoon, but other little facets of Disney history as well. My favorite is when Launchpad almost body slams the actor over a stack of Darkwing Adventures comics, a simple and really nice reference to the old Disney Adventures magazine I used to read as a kid.
Oh, my Darkwing Adventures comics is a complete run!
As the two fight amongst the Darkwing Duck collectibles, carefully trying to avoid damaging toys and comics, Launchpad starts to realize that this person he thought was his enemy isn't. There's a lot I love about this. Not only is it a solid beat for the story, but it also serves as a callback to the kind of classic superhero comics that Darkwing is kind of based off of. The stories where two heroes would meet each other and then in the initial misunderstanding and the direness of whatever the situation is, have a disagreement and get into a fight before ultimately realizing that they're on the same side. Even better, in the context of reboots and fandoms, this is kind of an important message that gets forgotten a lot. More often than not these days, when a beloved film, comic franchise, or comic reboot or reimagining is announced, there's a strong fan backlash. Dedicated, die-hard fans who, like Launchpad, are so protective of something they love and means a lot to them, they'll go to extremes to defend what they think is the right way to portray a character or make a story. When in reality, the people reimagining and rebooting these stories are almost always huge fans of the original too. Just like Launchpad, often as fans, our initial reaction to something new, a reboot, is to recoil back and to try and protect it from being damaged or tainted in some way. And that fear that something isn't exactly as we remembered might cause us to make the mistake of assuming that the creators don't care about the original story in the same way we might. But the reality is, most of the time, they're just as big of fans of it as we are. Maybe bigger. I could be reading into this too much, but this part of the story feels like the perfect symbolic cartoon analog for that fan reaction. One that reveals the truth behind that kind of misplaced, frustrated fan backlash. Just like many fans, Launchpad is initially defensive of Darkwing Duck, to the point he's willing to lock up the new actor to protect his idealized version of the show. But the more time they spend together, the more context Launchpad gets, and he realizes that this person he thought was an enemy is also a fan too. And of course he is. No matter what compromises you have to make as a creator working for a studio, you don't just go pouring your heart into rebooting an iconic and classic show without worrying about getting it right. And that context is brilliant. The new Darkwing actor, we'll get into what his name is and why it matters in a minute, isn't just any fan of the show. He's someone whose life was changed and inspired by it. In a beautiful flashback comic drawn by Mike Peraza, who worked on the original Darkwing series, we see how, as an awkward young kid, the new Darkwing was inspired by the original show, that it taught him to believe in himself and to never give up, and no matter how many times life knocks you down, you get back up again. It's honestly a kind of inspiring backstory, one that really helps fill out the motivation for this new actor, and why he's such a big fan of Jim Starlin and the original show, and why Launchpad instantly understands why his fan backlash was misplaced.
Look, I know this movie's not perfect, but I really want to make it better. Then maybe I can be on the lunchbox that inspires some other kid like me.
It also adds a great character-driven motivation for why in the original Darkwing Duck cartoon, the hero was always getting beaten up in slapstick situations. That's not something that ever needed any explanation, but casting it as Darkwing Duck's tenacity, that's clever. Speaking of that tenacity, Launchpad may have come to understand that the movie's creators aren't out to destroy the legacy of Darkwing Duck, but Jim Starlin hasn't. The old actor is obsessed with making a comeback, and he's determined to take over the film at any cost.
Jim Starlin never cuts!
Huh?
I'll film this finale if it kills me, and everyone on this roof!
It nearly does. Despite his unorthodox methods of taking over the role, Jim Starlin's version of the finale is actually pretty awesome. At least at first. As Darkwing, Jim faces off the new Megavolt and springs into action, but his obsession quickly gets the better of him. Soon, the set is on fire, and Starlin has clearly gone over the edge. Someone needs to stop Darkwing Duck, and there's only one person who can.
I am the overstuffed burrito that spills onto the lap of crime. I am Darkwing Duck!
This is the sequence that DuckTales has been building to ever since it introduced Darkwing Duck as an in-universe TV show character. Something that it did to set up not only the character, but this very fight itself. Earlier in this episode, we learned that DuckTales Universe's Darkwing Duck TV show ended on a cliffhanger. One where Darkwing Duck was going to fight another Darkwing Duck. Now, that's exactly what's happening, but with the full weight of everything we've seen to this point. An old actor's vanity, an old fan's anxiety over a reboot changing something he loved, and two new friends working together to save something they both care deeply about.
Let's get dangerous. This is so cool.
I know.
It feels so right.
What follows is a sequence that's almost the perfect tribute to the original Darkwing series. It's both a high-stakes action sequence and a parade of slapstick gags that perfectly capture the mix of humor, action, and heroics that made the original series special. In one moment, Darkwing is cartoonishly recovering from having a piano dropped on his head, but he's also bravely and dramatically charging forward in the next moment. This weird balance of seamless comedy and action is something that defined the original Darkwing Duck series, and it's incredibly gratifying to see this DuckTales tribute match that energy perfectly. As the battle goes on, the stakes are raised even higher. As Jim Starlin's obsession overrides his reason, it seems to be the end for our new masked mallard, until Launchpad steps in.
No matter how hopeless things got, Darkwing Duck got back up and did what was right.
This may be the most eloquent Launchpad has ever been.
He knows a lot about this one thing.
As the film studio collapses around them, Launchpad's speech helps Jim Starlin put things back in perspective. He seems to regain his composure and sanity long enough to save Launchpad and the new Darkwing just as the soundstage explodes. When the smoke clears, Starlin is nowhere to be found, and the movie project is cancelled. But that doesn't mean that Darkwing Duck doesn't have a future.
You know, you could do this for real. Gizmo Duck does it.
I am better than Gizmo Duck.
In a satisfying conclusion to both the episode itself and a season of teasing out the idea of Darkwing Duck as an in-universe TV show, the new DuckTales series does something the original Disney Afternoon never did. It successfully merges the world of DuckTales and Darkwing Duck into a single unified canon, and it was extremely clever about it. By making the new DuckTales version of Darkwing Duck a TV show within the show, it was able to build up the idea of the character without distracting from the DuckTales core cast. It also gave viewers unfamiliar with Darkwing a chance to build a fondness for the hero through Launchpad's fandom. So when Jim Starlin finally did appear in DuckTales, it wasn't just some nod to a series older DuckTales fans might have watched, but something everyone watching the show could recognize and enjoy. Bringing in a new character to fill in Darkwing's cape is equally brilliant. By splitting the concept of the character between two actors, DuckTales was able to separate the best and worst aspects of the original Darkwing's personality. The pure-hearted hero, represented by the new actor, and the somewhat selfish, egotistical vigilante, represented by Jim Starlin. Pitting the two against each other may have been an unconventional way to pass that Darkwing torch, but it was still fun and exciting, and it helped forge a new origin story for a character that Darkwing fans already know and love.
Drake Mallard. Never heard of you.
It also gave the creators of DuckTales the perfect opportunity to create a new origin for another fan-favorite Darkwing Duck character.
They want grim and gritty, huh? Happy to play the part.
This entire episode is amazing on so many levels. It's a loving tribute to a classic Disney Afternoon series that doesn't feel at all forced or out of place. It's a story of fandom and being inspired by something you loved as a child, to the point that it becomes part of who you are as an adult. It may even be a passive commentary on fan backlash and the struggles creators face when trying to reboot a beloved franchise for a new audience. It's also, like a lot of the new DuckTales series, clearly a labor of love, and it really shows. This isn't a wink and a nod or a drive-by cameo, but a story that was very carefully created to show the best of these characters and to bring them together in a wonderful way. It's something the show's creators have been subtly teasing for a long time, from jokes on Twitter to secretly quoting it at events and conventions. You know that Darkwing line at the beginning of the big fight in this episode? The one about the overstuffed burrito that falls into the lap of crime. DuckTales co-producer Frank Angones has casually said that at conventions at least a couple of times. They've been teasing this episode for years, and we didn't even know it. Either way, it was well worth the wait. From the stellar voice casting between Chris Diamantopoulos as the young, pure-hearted Darkwing Duck and Jim Cummings' return as the jaded Jim Starlin, to the incredible story, the symbolic commentary, and an incredibly fun, funny, and heartwarming adventure. It's a tribute that only works because the DuckTales crew took the time to get it right. They set this episode all the way back in Season 1, built it slowly throughout Season 2, and delivered on that groundwork in a spectacular way. It's one of the best episodes of the new DuckTales show yet, and a great tribute to another staple of the Disney afternoon. If you need a beloved series reimagined with love, respect, care, and fresh angles that can take a franchise in new and exciting directions, call Matt Youngberg, Frank Angones, and the DuckTales crew. This is a reboot done right.